Hello and welcome to episode 42 of the TRUUMAN Podcast, the podcast designed to create a generation of self-defined men. Today, I'm joined by Mark O'Brien. Mark, thank you so much for being with me today. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm great. Thanks. It's good to be here.
Amazing, thank you. And as always, I will start with arguably the hardest question on the planet. Mark, in your own words, what makes you a man?
I think I've learned over the last little while what makes me a man. I think I used to think it was how tough you can be, how strong you can be, but I've also learned about being a man is about how vulnerable you can be and be comfortable with it. I think being a man is something that I think people are starting to learn now, that it's kind of okay not to be okay, and all those kind of things that are being put around now. And I'm starting to understand that and believe it a lot more. I think that is something that I stand really strongly on, because again, like I've been someone who's gone through a lot of stuff in my life the last 10, 11 years. And I believe that it's one of those things that, yeah, I think standing for that as a man would be the fact of being able to be in control of your emotions.
It's a powerful question that I think people should ask a lot more regularly. I like how you said that it's changed and it was something, and I think that's important, is that it should be asked a lot. So, Mark, why don't you just explain a little bit about your background and what you do now?
So my background is basically I moved away from Ireland when I was 15 to be a professional footballer. And luckily enough for myself, I was able to achieve that, and I was a professional footballer for 11 years. But in that 11 years, like, I've had my fair share of a roller coaster, as I like to call it. I had open heart surgery at the beginning when I was 16. Got told I'd never play football again. And I ended up playing football again after that professionally for 11 years, and moving up and down the country, trying to pursue a career that I know I was lucky to do, but because not many people get to do it. But unfortunately, at the age of 27, I had to retire again due to open heart surgery again, which I had a leak in my aortic valve all over again. And now I've got a metallic valve, which has been placed into my heart, and I have to be on blood thinners for the rest of my life. So I think once football finished 4 years ago, it was something that was probably the start of a lot for me to understand me as a person more than anything else. I think the background of it all was I didn't know who I was away from football. I hadn't got a clue the person that I was. But I think moving on from that and getting to have an understanding of that and seeking out different types of help and seeking out doing counselling when I never thought I was be someone that needed counselling, I started to understand and realise that a lot of decisions that I've made for myself, and a lot of decisions that anybody can make, is like, you can remain a positive person through no matter what kind of trauma you face. And I think once I understood that and I started to own that and I started to kind of feel that way, I don't think there's an awful lot that has been able to kind of come close and kind of get me down since. But I think since retiring from football, I still work in football. I still need that fix of football, because for 11 years it was my life. So I still work in football, but I also do stuff away from football, where I sometimes go out and do some talks about adversity and facing it and the different effects it can have on you, the good and the bad. And I just like to go around, and I wrote a book and released a book of my life last year, which again was another big step of just getting my life out there and just giving different perspectives that people can resonate with. And again, yeah, I also like to just explore doing different things. I think I went down the route of doing media for cardiac issues and heart issues. And as I say, it just opened my mind that the person that I was in football was always me. It was just that I played a character as a footballer, but it was me that made my job successful, not the job that made me successful. So I kind of had to learn a lot along the way, but I think we're up to scratch until now. So I think this is this is the full kind of lowdown on me in shorter terms.
It sounds like you've packed in a lot in a short space of time, which is great. Let's talk a little bit about adversity and sort of your views on that, because it's probably 99% of little boys' dreams to play football, and probably definitely less than 1% make it to that sort of top level. You were told that you couldn't play at 16, and then you still went on to play. So what makes you different? What made you just keep pushing forward? How did that sort of work in your head?
I think because of the love that I had for football, it was like no other. Like it's almost like the whole relatable thing of, if it's go after something you love, you don't take the first hurdle, or you don't crumble at the first hurdle. If it's what you want to do, you can keep pursuing it until somebody definitely says no more. So my love for football was always to the case of, yeah, I had doctors say to me, Mark, you'll probably never play at a professional standard ever again. And the only difference was I got given a small glimmer of hope, where when I had the operation, they said it might last me a year to a maximum of 5 years. They told me, like, yeah, the professional standard may not happen ever again. But because there was always that small glimmer that potentially I could, I just kind of held on to that. And with the love that I had for football, and again, the support that I had around me, like my family never really put a doubt in my mind to tell me that it won't happen. The club, Derby County, I was at, never told me this will never happen. And everybody just kept plodding along. And I think being 16 and very naive to what open heart surgery was, I never really paid attention to the operation. I kind of just looked at it to an extent of saying, well, this is what I need to do to get back playing. And then the open heart surgery is something that I look at and say it was the starting point for a lot of facing adversity head on through my career. So I always look back at what was a terrible time having the open heart surgery. It was the beginning of being able to look back at the open heart surgery each time I'd face something and say, well, if I can get back from open heart surgery, a cruciate ligament injury in my knee isn't going to stop me. And if I can get back from a cruciate ligament and an open heart, well, then this manager's opinion isn't going to stop me. So I always just had that core of love of football. But then even though I had bad experiences along the way, those bad experiences in my mind were ways to overcome the next thing. And they were always teaching me and growing me stronger. And I think that is something that from young, I was able to kind of gather in my head that, yeah, I've got back from this, so it's not going to knock me. And yeah, I felt down when these things happened, but I also had to pull myself out of it and say, well, no, the positive of it is that I can face it and I can overcome it and I will get back. And again, that served me a lot through my whole career.
It's clear that there's a passion there, and that it's something that you just essentially couldn't let go of, and really wanted to keep doing. And I'm doing a lot of stuff at the moment around resilience and that side of things. And I think we're actually quite similar ages. We're sort of both early 30s, right? And I find that you see people wanting to get rich quick or retire early and all of these things. But I think resilience is one of those things that has to be earned through living. I don't think that you can just create resilience. I think you have to go through things and then essentially look in the mirror, right, and say, this is what I want to do, this is my purpose, and this is why I want to continue doing this. And no matter what's thrown at you from there, you can really start to just keep pushing forward, no matter, as you've said, what happens to you, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I've always thought, is that like a resilience does come from, you do have to get knocked back and you do have to fall at hurdles and you do need pick-me-ups from other people, but it's all stuff that is literally just moulding you, and you don't even sometimes realise that it's moulding you. And it's something that just slowly but surely, when you face other different adversities in front of you, it's something that you think, oh, well, I can face this, and the next thing is I can face that. And every single situation you're going to come up to, and I'm a big believer in it now, is that everything is going to be uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to face something. It's uncomfortable to have a certain conversation, and it's uncomfortable to say certain things. But everything that you've done in your life to this day, something along the way has always been uncomfortable, but now you might look at it and say it's comfortable. So I do believe that resilience is built over time in yourself. It's something that, again, like you say, everybody wants to click of the fingers and wake up tomorrow and now all of a sudden you're resilient and you're this and you're that. Like, something is that where this is something where I believe it's just over time. You've got to just allow it naturally grow and naturally get there. And like you say, some people are fortunate enough that they don't have to go through certain traumatic things and they don't have to go through certain things. And that is amazing for them. But I also believe is that you can still turn your traumatic times into a positive to say, well, I'm thankful this has happened, and I'm thankful because if that never happened, I wouldn't have been able to do this. Because I'm able to do this, that'll set me up for the next thing. And like you say, I just always believe that everything that you face or anything that you want to go through is all due to choice. And everybody has that choice where my opinion on adversity is it leaves you with two choices, whether you want to let it sink you or you want to swim with it, because there's never an in-between. So I always believe, well, if you choose to swim at some stage, whether it is in a couple of weeks, months or years, you are going to carry on swimming. And it's about just taking those each small steps along the way. Whereas, as you say, those people who do sink are, are definitely ones where, do you know what, they might have given up hope, but then that's where you have your circle of people around you that you know are the ones that can kind of pick you up until you find that one step after the next. So, like you say, I do think resilience is something that you need to go through to kind of really, really understand it. But there's still being able to have that choice of surrounding yourself with the right people, that even if you aren't skilled in resilience, have the people around you who can be resilient for you until you inherit that.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I want to sort of touch on is you obviously had another element to your career that put a little bit of pressure on it. But if we look at professional sport as a whole anyway, it's naturally a short career and it can end at any stage. Is there anything that you can sort of pass on to people that sort of helps you get through that? Because it's obviously a dream to get there, but it can be taken away at any stage, right?
Yeah, and I think like when you get into professional sport, I think you you can't go in it you can't go in it for the wrong reasons. I think you have to keep the core love and passion of why you've done this sport. And like you say, in any sport that you go into, if you keep that first of all core passion of what you went after, then there will be nothing that will not be able to let you fulfill it. It's when people go into it for the wrong reasons, or people want to be a footballer, for example, and say, I want the cars, I want the money, I want the lifestyle. Well, that's something that you'll be chasing that constantly. So when you get your knocks, when you get your injuries, when you get an opinion that doesn't quite go your way, you want to hang up your boots straight away and you don't want to face it head on. But I think people who keep that passion and love of football inside them, no matter of an opinion, no matter of an injury, and no matter of a knockback or a team that doesn't want you, you will constantly keep on pushing and keep on pushing. And I always just believe that once you get into football, it does turn very into, let's say it's your job. But when you can separate the two of going, yes, it's my job, but I love it. Yes, this is something that is quite difficult and we make a lot of sacrifices, but I love it. I think that is something where you keep the core of your love through it all. There will be nothing that will stop anybody fulfilling whatever they wanted to fulfill.
And that's with anything, right? It's not just sport. It can be your at another job or your family or anything like that. As long as you can find passion and purpose in what you want to do, the adversity and the things that you go through are a lot easier to deal with if you've got that passion and purpose.
Yeah, no, I definitely believe that. I do honestly believe the fact of, it's like when you do face any sort of adversity, again, it's always to the same thing of, is it worth going through or is it not? And I think everybody gets faced with that, where if you're not really interested in something, it's easy just to go, look, it's not for me. But when it is that something that, anything in life that you are thinking, I want nothing more but this, you're going to face anything that comes your way head on. And I always am just a massive believer in that. And I was unfortunate, where, like you say, I lost my purpose after football, and that's where I have probably more of an understanding of people when you speak about depressions and you speak about panic attacks and you speak about PTSD and you speak about anxieties. All of those different things are stuff that I've never faced and I never had to face and I never wanted to face, but I'm glad that I faced it. Now that you come out the other side and have a better understanding of everything, I'm so glad I faced it all, because through the time of football, it's you live in your own bubble and everything is amazing. But like you say, I think it's one of those things that when you come away from it all and you lose that purpose, it's about putting everything that you've learned along the way back into another purpose and go, okay, now this is my next purpose. Now it gives me something to focus on. And I always believe purpose is just a focus that allows your mind to feel a lot more at ease rather than thinking, what am I here for?
Yeah, definitely. It's 100% that. I really want to talk about the sort of end of your career and that stage next, because I always use this example that in the past, parents and things like that might have had a midlife crisis, bought a Porsche and done something crazy along that side of things. What I've sort of noticed with this sort of next generation is our midlife crisis is coming a little bit earlier. I think pandemic, COVID has sort of helped with that. And we've found these new nuances to life and this different way of wanting to live. But yours was just taken away from you because it's one, a condition, and two, sport is fragile like that. It can be sort of taken away from a very early age. And I always find it funny because a lot of people want to retire early, but with sport, it's sort of it's done for you. So what does that feel like?
Do you know what? It felt terrible. Like, I knew it was something that it was inevitable, because at 16, as I said, I was getting years longer than any doctor ever gave me. But that moment when you get told, and that moment that that decision is made that you're not going to play again, it's like at the beginning I thought, look, it's something I can easily deal with. I don't have to play again. But look, I'm having open heart surgery, so I had a lot of other distractions until I had to face, right, I'm never going to get to do this. I'm never going to get to do this again. But when I had to face the fact that I'm never going to play football again, I honestly thought I'll never watch it. Like, I went back to my previous club, Newport, and I couldn't sit and watch football games. I couldn't sit and watch them train. I still had to be around the environment because it was all I knew, but I couldn't watch the games because I felt as though I can't affect it. I was getting anxious. I couldn't be out there on the field. I couldn't help my ex teammates win a game. Like, the feeling that I had was just like, I'll never be that again. Like, that feeling of winning and that feeling of getting to be a captain of a team and being out there and getting to run around, keep fit, keep well, keep healthy, all these different things. I just thought, I won't get to do that again. Like, what am I going to do next? And I questioned so many things in my head, thinking, do I move back to Ireland? Do I just look for a different career? Do I just go in a complete different way? Do I just never leave the apartment that I live in? Do I just stay in? What do I do? Like, and it even broke it down to the point of, like, it was almost, I fell into a depression that I never thought was depression. I just kept making excuses for it, that, oh, well, it's the open heart surgery. That's why I'm not wanting to wake up. That's not why I'm wanting to do these things. And it took a few people and then me having to do some counselling to understand that it really, really got a hold of me, and it really made me feel like stuff I've never felt before. Like, I'd speak 2 seconds about myself and you'd see me burst into tears because I didn't know how to speak about myself, because when you're in sport, everything is about the team. Everything is about what the team done and how the team are doing, and everything's amazing. And I just think, coming to the end of that career, as much as when I did the work for myself and I got a lot of help off people, I started to look at my career differently, where it wasn't the fact that my career was taken away from me, even though it was. But if you had told me at 16 I was going to play for 11 years, well, then that's 11 years more than any doctor ever gave me. So when I retired at 27, I feel as though I was lucky to get 11 years. So then that kind of that kind of perspective on it, and that perception that I look at it now is kind of that, right, football saved me life. Football gave me 11 amazing years that I probably should have never have had. So not that a career was taken away from me, it was more that I was given a career that now all of a sudden I'm actually able to get a head start on that retirement side of stuff, that head start on what am I going to do after sport, to what some people, like you say, when you're in sport, you never want to retire from it. You never want to come away from it. And now I just look at it differently to say, well, I've just been given that head start over people that I've played alongside that they're going to have to face at some stage, but hopefully I'll be much better equipped to be able to pass on some advice and pass on certain things to people to say it is actually going to be okay, and be that example.
Is there support within the clubs, or is it just a case of your contract's done and thanks for your time? What does that look like?
To be honest, it's kind of like when you get released from a club, it is that same thing of, well, look, it was great the years that you've had here and it's been amazing and you've done well for the club, but football doesn't stop, and it's exactly like life. Life doesn't stop moving, and the football club isn't going to stop moving just because you're gone. That's going to keep on moving. It's a business. So I think there are support systems outside of that football club. There are support systems from the PFA and different things that I think when they do sit down with players and they do talk with players, and there are counsellors out there for this type of stuff, that I do believe that's not used as much, because again, footballers are men, were examples, were in the spotlight. Like, you're meant to be at tip-top physical condition, and mentally I'm meant to be the strongest person alive, and like, you don't get treated as a human, you get treated as a robot, you get treated as another number. So I always believe is that probably these services aren't used half as much as they probably should. I think nowadays they're getting used a lot more, which is great. And I think clubs up and down the country, I think, are definitely using a support system so much better now than probably what they've done for so many years.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think there's that perception of I'm at the top and I'm just gonna power on through, and almost I guess a denial to it as well, to an extent, because of just natural. I'm a sportsman. I can carry on. This isn't over type. There might be a bit of that playing around as well. I sort of see this with Ronaldo now. I think he's really fighting to sort of stay in sport, and yeah, I think it's tough for him, but it's definitely. I've never played at that level. I would love to have played at that level. I think it's just a different mindset, and it's a tricky one. But I guess after all that, how did you start to move towards a new purpose and a new focus in life, essentially?
It was moving towards a new focus, I think, came from everything I went through. I think, like, I just started to be more open and honest, because at the beginning it's the simple thing of, yeah, I'm okay, yeah, I'll be fine, yeah, look, these things happen, and you just kind of play it off like it's absolutely nothing. And then there was a certain point where, when I started to do counselling and I started to open up about certain things, like, I started to hear off other people who were close to me saying, like, your life or your story, as it's been called, could help so many people. Like, and you just speaking open and honestly about it, and the little small platform that you may have due to being in sport is something where, yeah, people should and want to hear this, because there's going to be so many people out there that have gone through traumatic things, and it's not about needing to go through open heart surgery or go through certain things, it's the feelings behind it all. So it's the fact of going, okay, well, I'll speak a little bit more about it, but I wasn't comfortable enough. So then I made myself comfortable speaking about times I've cried, times I didn't want to sleep, times I was afraid to sleep, times I didn't want to leave myself. Like, all of these things that, like you say, people sometimes struggle on a daily basis with these things. And I just think how I see things so much more positively, and how I kind of like to live my life being a positive type person, where I get you go through tough times, but in every tough time, I'm always a believer that there's a silver lining in everything. Because if you want to look at it and you want to see the perspective of the silver lining, you will find one regardless. If you want to look at it and see the worst time in things, you will find it. So it's almost about like you change your perspective and you change your perception of what you're going through and what you're seeing. So I always believe is that led me towards going, okay, well, if I'm able to make what I went through seem as though, do you know what, I've learned a lot and I've gone through tough times, but be open and honest about it. Well, then if somebody can see an ex-professional footballer be so open and honest, well, then they might feel, I can do it. And then the next person can feel they can do it. And it's just something that I kind of took, like, I kind of took on for myself. But also it's helping me to think that next purpose is, well, I've had to go through all of these things to be able to do this. And I think that's where the purpose then starts to make it feel as though, right, well, open heart surgeries and 11-year career with injuries and setbacks and all these different things, they've all happened for the reason of this is why. And now I've given the reason why that I enjoy helping people, and I feel as though I have a greater understanding of a lot of different things now.
It's one of the reasons that I originally started this podcast was if I can share stories from other men, I'm hoping that there'll be some parallels. It wasn't necessarily about finding the same story again, because that's going to be impossible, but they find a parallel, they speak to their partner, they speak to their friend, whoever they need to, and they start to move in the right direction. Then I would be, this podcast has done what it needs to do. So I'm super glad that you're sharing your story, because it's another story that hopefully someone can hear and hopefully someone can learn from. One thing that you keep talking a little bit in the past tense about like having bad days and stuff like that. I want to talk about now. Like, do you still have bad days?
Yeah, so to this day, I would still have bad days, but I do think they're a lot less. I think I've learned to be able to cope with them a lot better. I don't let what has happened to me have a hold of me. Like I have moved forward in so many different ways that, yeah, I could wake up tomorrow morning, and I think that's already me getting off to a great start in the day. Like I've broken things down enough in my mind to be able to think, well, at one stage I had a doctor tell me that I had 24 hours to live. And now when I get to open my eyes, which again, anybody can take for granted, because you can look a week in advance and think, well, next week I'm going to be doing this, and next week, well, you don't even know if tomorrow's guaranteed. But yeah, it is something where I think to this day now, yeah, I still have days where I can feel not great. And feeling not great is just something where, do you know what, I probably not slept right, or I woke up in the middle of the night with similar nightmares that I've had through my time, where I kind of wake up in a panic and I can feel my chest pounding. But I deal with that a lot more better, because I'm able to just think, right, this has happened before, right, just turn over, go back to sleep, everything will be all right. And when that first started happening, I would wake up and I'd stay up for the whole night, and then that would wreck me next day, and then the next time and the next time. Whereas now it's like I'm more in control of my mind now than I ever was, where it's almost to the point of where things will still come into my mind about what if this happens, and all the what ifs, and what about when that happened, and all of those things. And it's the same even for myself. Like I can hear my valve ticking every single day. I can feel it thumping on my chest every single day. But like again, in time, I've just gotten comfortable with it. I've just gotten better with it. And I think it's just that to this day now, I think it's normal still to have bad days, and it's still normal, but I just know how to handle it a lot better. And I think there's no getting rid of them, and there's no magic cure to say it will never happen again, but there's more of a understanding to it, and just knowing that, do you know what, your mind will play tricks on you, but the more you have control over that, and the more at ease you are with the simple things, the bigger things don't even make a difference anymore.
The getting over or being able to deal with bad days is a really nice way of putting it, because 100% life's ebbs and flows, and it's never going to be 100% perfect, no matter how well you build it. I get that question a lot, like, you must always be happy and these sort of things, and that's obviously not the case, because I've had an open conversation with myself for the last 2.5 years doesn't mean that I'm like perfect. It just means that I can have that conversation. I can look myself in the mirror and I can start to process things a little bit more analytical almost, rather than just emotion and letting the sort of feeling take over the whole thing, which is a nice way of putting it. So, Mark, how would you suggest to someone who is that hard shell, loves sport, how do you start to break that person down to really allow that vulnerability in?
I think to allow that vulnerability in, I think always starts with yourself. I think it literally always starts with the fact of just thinking you have so many things going on in your mind. When I was that hard and shelled of a person, I had so many things going on in my mind, but it was that first step of speaking about myself, whether that was like a short sentence, whether that was a paragraph of things, it was that small little thing of going, now it's about me. And I think every man struggles with the fact of thinking it has to be about me, because you're meant to be about the team, you're meant to be about everything else. And I think that one time you have to break the kind of stereotype of thinking, when it's in football especially, if you're seen speaking about yourself, you're seen as arrogant, you're seen as big time, you're seen as flashy, you're seen as all of these different things. Whereas because that's been ingrained into you, you struggle to even say one nice word about yourself. And sometimes it's the fact of actually being able to be kinder to yourself, which is something I struggled with. It's something that I always had, said to me, Mark, you're too hard on yourself. Stop being hard on yourself. And I never understood what being hard on myself ever was, until I had to start sitting in it and thinking, just because I didn't exercise today, relax. You don't have to beat yourself up about it. Just because I didn't do something I was supposed to do, well, relax. Don't beat yourself up about it. So there's all of those things where, to break that hardened shell, I am a massive believer that it all starts with one conversation. One conversation of the fact of just going, actually, you know what, I'm going to be honest today. And that honesty might just be how you felt through your career, or how you felt in that day, or how you feel exactly in this moment. Because that's the one thing I learned, is that the minute I started having those one open conversations with people, or one open conversation for myself, tears just kept coming out of me. And I just felt as though, why am I getting upset speaking about myself so much? Because I shouldn't be. I shouldn't be getting upset speaking about how I feel. But when you start to unravel that and unwind it, you start seeing the different things of going, actually, do you know what? I am very hard on myself, and I'm not giving myself that little bit of a break, and I'm very strict on myself. And then when that all starts to break and you get a better understanding of everything, then all of a sudden you start realizing your life becomes so much more relaxed. You stop worrying about the what ifs and the bigger picture and what's happening next week, what happened 10 years ago. You're starting to actually just focus on the day that you've got in front of you. And if that day is going great, brilliant. If it's not, but you still keep on going. And then you break it down again by the end of it and go, well, that's what happened today. But do you know what? Sometimes I think to myself is, if I get the opportunity of waking up tomorrow, well then, do you know what? It's an opportunity to be able to then change or go forward with what I need to go forward with. I don't dwell on too many things.
When you answered the question, what makes you a man, you talked a lot about this sort of being able to now open up and the vulnerability side of things. How do you think that can be implemented in sort of the next generation? How is that going to trickle down to those people growing up?
I think for it to be able to be trickled down is to the point of, I think it's already happening. I think you see a lot more vulnerability out there, and don't get me wrong, I just think a lot more of the older generation, and I think from sports people, I think from celebrities, I think from people who all of a sudden these kids are looking up to, which seems as though there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of famous people nowadays that people always seem to look up to, that when they start showing their true selves and their true honesty and that true things, not trying to sell kids certain things or not trying to be a certain way, it's more about just going, okay, but how, having networks out there where I just think the more I've spoken about it, the more that I see it's happening now. So I think already it is trickling down to these next generation of kids where they're a lot more in touch with being that open and honest, and they will say how they feel, and they will be a little bit more reassured. But also I think it takes people like more sports related, or as I said, celebrity wise, that just to be more vulnerable themselves, to sit there. And that's why I always think you see podcasts and different things nowadays like yourself that give these opportunities for these sports people to speak, or these celebrities to speak, so then you see the real them. And when you see the real them and the people that may look up to them, it already filters through without even needing to sit and have that one conversation. So what I say or what someone else may say already is like a ripple effect, where if they hear something that resonates with them, they might go, I actually felt like that. And then they might have that one conversation somewhere else. And then that one conversation could then go to somebody else. And before you know it, it starts spreading that way.
It's more conversations like this for me is my goal, is to have more conversations like this. I think that will really help. One thing that I want to work with is sort of like slightly older people as well. I think there's still a little bit of a tougher nut to crack that way, where it's very generational and very ingrained, this sort of man, provider, protector, almost caveman-esque, without being able to have these conversations. So that for me is sort of my next big step, is like, how do I sort of try and break into these people and do that side of things. In regards to yourself, what does this world look like now? Is it just a case of the occasional keynote speaking, or are you looking to do something bigger? What's your goal next when it comes to this space?
I think when it comes to this space, I think with my book, I'm wanting that to be read far, far wide, and I want people to be able to resonate with it. I think maybe go out and want to explore a couple of more keynote speaking, and to be able to really hone down into a certain thing and get the story of my life heard and spoken of, and just not even the story itself, but like the feeling behind it, to where anybody can kind of relate to it. And also I think just remaining in sport where I am right now, I think I'm happy. I think I'm comfortable with what I do, because of what I do in sport now is I'm not a coach. I'm not somebody who's there to dictate to people, but I'm there as the crutch to lean on, where if somebody does get injured, if somebody does have struggles at home, if a manager doesn't select someone, or if somebody is getting released, I'm that person that it's like, right, I can share my experience to you, and I can sit and talk with you, I can sit and help you, I can do as you please, but I do it in a way where the player always feels as though, well, I still have someone in my corner. And I think that is something that I wished I had at certain teams and certain clubs, that, do you know what, when you always feel as though you've got that one person in your corner, that one little bit of advice for someone who's been there, it goes such a long way. And as I say, I think this space for me is, I want to just be able to grow more and more, to be able to help more people. And if helping more people is about speaking open and honestly, and speaking from the root of so many things that have happened, just to be able to open up that little corridor of conversation for somebody else, well, then I just feel as though that's where things are taking me at the moment.
Is that what you think is needed more of in the men's space? Is just more spaces to have conversation?
Yeah, because I believe that it's happening a lot more now, which is great. But like most of the time, you see through socials now that there are a lot more men that are speaking. There are different groups that men can turn to. There are different things where men can sit with men, and it doesn't have to be in a sports environment, and it doesn't have to be in a typical man space. It's literally one man to another, and it could be, like you say, sitting in a one-on-one basis like we are now, and it's just speaking, and it is just saying, look, I've had the same things you've had. I didn't have to have all these other traumatic things, but I felt it, and I felt this, and I always just believe that every single person are connected in some way, because we've all felt the same things. And it's about, okay, well, if I'm finding myself comfortable speaking about it, that might allow you, who's not comfortable, go, well, if he's comfortable, I'll be comfortable too. And it's making that uncomfortableness feel comfortable for anybody. And I just believe once that becomes comfortable to speak of, I don't think you'll be able to not hear somebody speak, because I think it's just something where it's slowly creeping into that point now that it's getting a lot more heard and it's getting a lot more spoken of and it's getting a lot more comfortable. And now you're getting men coming forward left, right and centre. And I think it's brilliant, because everybody then starts to understand that, you know what, we're not all robots at the end of the day.
Yeah, that permission to talk, almost, I found when I started talking about it and started this, I asked, my first couple of guests were just friends, and I just asked them if they wanted to do it. I expected them to say no. They said yes, which was amazing. And then I've had conversations outside of this, more private, but they've been able to open up just because I said, you know what, I'm going to talk because I want to talk and I feel this way. And I think it's important that I'm heard, essentially. So you're right. It's just, if every man can speak, we'd be in a much better powerful position as men, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. Because I do believe that it's one of those things that men are programmed, let's say, to be able to bottle it up and be able to go through tough decisions and tough situations. But I also believe there has to be that kind of space where you can sit with someone and just go and breathe, because there's only so much you can keep building up until you explode. And then that turns into what someone might see as anger and all these different things, where I just look at it in a sense of going, okay, it doesn't have to be on a massive scale. You don't have to be talking to different people in loads of different groups and all of this, but it might be just sit and have that one person for yourself to go, this person knows everything about me and I feel comfortable and I can just speak. And that's the one thing that I always find, is that I find a lot of people find me approachable to the fact of, well, I'll just speak honestly. And if it's something that you start thinking, oh, well, look, he's being open and honest, he's speaking. Yeah, do you know what? I'll tell him a little something. And then I'll tell him something a little bit more, because I think the difference is, what happens is, I thought it for myself at the start, was you feel as though you're going to get judged if you shed a tear, or if you felt scared, or if you didn't feel quite right, or that offended you, or this wasn't great. You almost feel as though you're being judged and you're being less manly for all these different reasons. Whereas now it's kind of like, no, you can feel all these things and we can all have the same different feelings. Doesn't make you any less of a man. And it's just about finding those right people and surround yourself with the right people that are willing to, as you say, make you heard, and you're not just kind of feeling judged for it.
Those people you'll get better connections with as well, right? It's
yeah.
There's a lot of men that sort of don't have friends, have acquaintances and that sort of thing. But if you're able to have those conversations, they'll soon become very good friends very quickly, is what I found as well. Like, just that bond of being able to share it is really powerful. Mark, I'll let you sort of wrap up and sort of say where's the best place to find you, where's the best place, when's the book, and all of these things. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. So yeah, I'll hand over to you to tell people where to find you if they've loved what they've heard.
No, honestly, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. But like, through Instagram, I've got an Instagram, I've got LinkedIn, I've got Twitter. And yeah, like, my book is already out on Amazon. It's called Game of Two Hearts. And it is something that, like you say, hopefully if you read it, it's a story of a footballer, and there's loads of football stories in it. But I think the messaging is to the fact of, you can follow any profession and you can pursue it, and no matter what you get faced with, you can be successful and succeed in it. And as you say, it's just through all of those different things that we've just spoken about, I'm just glad of the opportunity to be able to speak of it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Mark.
No problem.